The winter meetings was definitely not boring. Justin Verlander is no longer a Houston Astro. He has a new home up with the Mets. Trey Turner has signed with the Phillies. And Dusty Baker reveals all about Willson Contreras. And who are the other names that he's going after? Or maybe not him, but the guy making the decisions, which is the guy that has the money, and that is Jim Crane. So this is among some of the topics we're going to talk about on this edition of the Locked On Astros podcast that starts now.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Astros, your daily Astros podcast. Here are your hosts, Eric the Man Huysman and Brett H-Town Wheelhouse Chancey.
We are Locked On Houston Astros, and we hope that you join us for a daily Locked On Astros podcast. My name is Eric Huysman. You can find me on Twitter at Eric Talk Stros. Find the show at Locked On Astros, your team every day. Brett's at the Rockets game, and I decided to go ahead and do a solo podcast because there's a lot for us to talk about. Justin Verlander signs a 2-year, $86 million option deal with a third-year mutual option with the Mets. And this was, remember, we reported on last night's show that Carlos Baegra on Instagram actually reported this deal. So, wow, he actually got it right. So before we get too deep into the show, thank you guys for making the Locked On Astros podcast your first listen every day, whether it's on YouTube. Make sure you go and keep on subscribing, and go ahead and tune in to us on Apple, Odyssey, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Check out the Locked On Astros podcast, your team every day. So Verlander is no longer going to pitch for the Houston Astros, but what did he do for your Houston Astros? At the time of the trade, we all remember that trade. It was after Hurricane Harvey. And I believe it was August 31st. And we're all like, okay, this is a non-waiver trade deadline, which does not exist anymore. And people are like, are the Astros going to do anything? They need some help if they want to win the World Series this year. And what did they do? They had to wait for Justin Verlander and Kate Upton and whoever else to make the decision to accept a trade to the Astros, because they could go ahead and block a trade to the Astros, but they took a leap of faith, and now the Astros have won 2 World Series because of it. So if you're looking at what's going on, his success in a World Series was not great. He did get a win this past year, so that's something to look forward to. But overall, Justin Verlander was great for the Houston Astros. Yes, he did pitch 2 seasons. I guess he got paid for 2 seasons where he didn't pitch much, except for one game where he threw, I want to say it was like 7 innings. But I think he made $66 million in those 2 years. But what he did outside of those 2 missing years was great. Last year, he came back from Tommy John surgery and was the Cy Young in American League. And he was one of the big reasons why the Astros won 106 games. And you're going to have to replace a guy that pitched a lot of innings. In 5 years with the Astros, he had a 2.26 ERA, a 2.89 FIP, and a 187 ERA plus. And so last year, the Astros pitched 915 innings from their starters. Of the starters returning, 715 of them were from the current starters. So Justin Verlander was a big portion of what happened last year. So he will be missed, but the Astros were not going to give him Max Scherzer money. He got $43.33 million per year from the Mets for 2 years and a mutual option for the 3rd season. So he's going to be 43 years old pitching on that salary. So I don't know if the Astros were willing to go that high. I bet you they're willing to do $35 million, something like that. But you know what? Sometimes, and I need to tell myself this too, you got to let them go. Just remember the good times. And somebody's saying it here. Jonathan says, goodbye, JB. goodbye, JV. Thanks for the memories. So yeah, thank you for the memories, JV. It was great. All the times that got to watch you pitch. I mean, this is a Hall of Fame pitcher. No matter what, I think that this guy is a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's gonna maybe get close to 300 wins. He's got a whole bunch of World Series wins. Or no, I think maybe just two. But still, he's got the MVPs, he's got the Cy Youngs, he's got the no hitters. There's so much that he's done, but unfortunately, the time with the Astros was done. And if the Astros would have signed Justin Verlander for $43 million, and I'm pretty sure that Justin Verlander reached out to Crane and said, "Hey, this is what the Mets are offering me. I'll give you a chance. I wouldn't mind coming back to Houston. Is there any way that you can go ahead and match this?" And I think there's some reports on Twitter. I don't know how accurate that was, but there were some reports on Twitter that that's what was happening. But I'm pretty sure Jim Crane said, JV, thanks for reaching out to me, but that's a little too rich for my blood. I'm going to have to fold in this case. And so Verlander signed with the Mets. I know that Jeremy Booth said that he was reaching out to Mets players and just kind of seeing what the organization was like today. But and he finally made the decision to leave Houston. This was the first time that he really had. I mean, I know he re-signed with the Tigers, but this is the first time. I guess he actually accepted the trade to the Astros. So never mind. He's always been in control of his destiny. So we all knew this was going to happen as soon as DeGrom left the Mets. It made perfect sense. So definitely a situation where he's going to be missed, but the Astros have 6 starters as is. Yes, none of them are as good as Justin Verlander, but I think that Framber Valdez is a tad behind him. Christian Javier, if he keeps on pitching like he did last year, he's going to reach that status soon. And Hunter Brown, he's a little bit unknown. And I know that Keith Law kind of threw some shade at Hunter Brown and Lance McCullers, saying that, oh yeah, they're probably both tied for the 5th best starter on the team. I mean, Lance McCullers can't stay healthy, and then Hunter Brown has control issues. That may be the case, but if those are your 5th starters, that's a great team. So I think that the Astros needed to fix the offense, and that's what the Astros are kind of focused on right now. So I think that Framber Valdez is the ace. That's what Peace Up H-Town says. That I think Framber Valdez is probably going to get the opening day start. If you're going to ask me what the order is going to be as of right now, I mean, things can change. But I would say it's going to be probably Valdez, maybe McCullers. I think that the Astros still view him as a top starter. Maybe then Christian Javier. Then you'll probably have Luis Garcia. And then maybe Hunter Brown. Maybe somebody else. I don't know. We'll talk about that once we get closer to the season. But it's kind of sad to see Verlander go. But at the same time, you've got to upgrade the offense. And that's what the Astros are trying to do. They've already said they already signed Jose Abreu, and Dusty Baker had a press conference at the winter meetings. And one of the things he did talk about was that Jose Abreu will be a good addition to the team. He talked to a lot of people in Chicago, and they said that he was really good with the young guys. And so this could be a good team, and he's a good role model. So, hey, if this is another Yuli type guy, a guy to mentor guys, I'm all for it. And he's going to hit good. He's going to play great defense. So we'll talk more about what Dusty Baker said, because remember how we've been hinting that the Astros are after Willson Contreras? Well, what we learned today is that they really are looking at him possibly as a catcher. So I would bet that they're going to go ahead and look at Willson Contreras as a catcher, and that they're going to be talking about him soon. And definitely you can go to betonline.net as your number one source for all sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. I wonder what the odds were that Justin Verlander would go to the Mets. I'm sure a lot of people have been like, the Mets? You're crazy. But there they are. And then Trey Turner, the Phillies. Did the Phillies' odds of winning the World Series go up? I mean, they went to the World Series last year. Now, adding a player like Trey Turner, does that kind of give them an extra edge? So, get all the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer and esports. We got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those on Bet Online as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use a mobile device to learn more. Bet Online, it's where the game starts. All right, so I know that a lot of people were hoping, maybe betting that Justin Verlander would come back, but he turned down a $25 million deal and he got $43 million. That's a win in my book. And I know I was telling my students today, I'm like, so he turned down this and he bet on himself and he got $43 million. That's great. So we'll see what happens. Now, are the Mets going to win the World Series? They do have Max Scherzer. Then they do have Verlander now. Then they have a couple other good pitchers. Do they have enough to win? Who knows? But I think Verlander felt that the money was good, the situation was good, and I'm fine with that. As long as he didn't go to the Dodgers. That would have made me sick to my stomach if he went to the Dodgers, honestly. So let's go ahead and move on to the offense. I know that we've been talking a lot about Willson Contreras possibly being the DH and playing some left field. And that's not something that Dusty Baker is kind of envisioning. And he talked about Willson Contreras a lot in his press conference. And I don't know if the press conference was really to send a message to Willson Contreras that, hey, we're sorry we said no at the trade deadline. It wasn't you. It was us. It wasn't the fact that we didn't want you. We just didn't think it was the right time. We didn't think that you would have enough time to get for you to get to know the catchers, the pitchers, and we just felt like it wasn't the right situation. So that's why we said no. That doesn't mean we rejected you, and that doesn't mean we don't want you right now. That's basically the message that Dusty Baker said in the meeting. He said that wasn't right timing and it wasn't a proper fit. And he said that has no bearing on the team's interest in him now. He said that they do have interest in the catcher and they plan on meeting with him. And they do want to go ahead and this is exactly what he said. He said, people take no sometimes as rejection. It wasn't about that. It was the timing wasn't right. I stressed that then, but it didn't come out right. So I know that doesn't really sound like, oh, Dusty Baker wants him as a catcher. I haven't got to those comments yet. So definitely going forward, we're going to talk to Contreras, and we have interest in him. If the numbers are right, the years are right, and the situation is right, then it's right for both of us. If not, we still have some catching depth. So he envisions him as a catcher. Maybe he'll play some DH because we still have Martin Maldonado. So maybe he'll play some left field, but we'll see there. So remember that Contreras has a qualifying offer attached to him. So the Astros will have to give up a draft pick, and they'll also have to give up a $5,000 in international draft pool money. So also there's concern out within the organization that if you sign Contreras and he wants to be the catcher, what happens to Martin Maldonado? I mean, he is your everyday catcher. He's the guy that Dusty Baker likes. He's he's Machete. He's the guy that everybody wants. So if you're signing him to be a catcher, and being a catcher is more valuable than being a DH and left fielder. So you know for a fact that Contreras is going to be pushing for that. And Contreras is going to be like, well, y'all rejected me back in July. So definitely I want to be a catcher. I don't have to be the everyday catcher, but I do want to catch. I do want to play almost every day. I don't have to be the everyday catcher, but I do want to catch a lot. So this is what Dusty Baker had to say. If we do sign somebody, we have to be prepared to let one of our young catchers go because it's going to stunt his growth. If we don't sign them, you have to figure out which young catcher that you're going to groom to possibly take Maldi's spot. It's a pretty good situation when you have an older catcher and a younger catcher that's been groomed to do his job. And then he said, you have to learn your pitching staff. You have to learn how we go about doing things. And I didn't feel like there's enough time. I guess that goes back to that. So, what it sounds like is they're looking at Contreras as a catcher. I know this is something that we've been talking about and saying, no, I don't think he could be a catcher, but Dusty Baker seems to be thinking of him as a catcher. I know he could play left field. I know he could be DH, but do you need more evidence? Well, when he was asked about the DH position, you ready for this? He said, well, we've also been talking about bringing Michael Brantley and Yuli Gurriel back. So he's addressing the DH spot. So if you bring back Michael Brantley or Yuli Gurriel, then to play DH, then you got to have a place for Contreras to play if they do that. So I think that if you're looking at what's going on, there could be an opportunity where, let's say they sign Willson Contreras. There could be a chance that the Astros are like, Maldonado, you've done great. We've got an offensive catcher now. We got somebody who's going to handle majority of our catching starts. We also have Corey Lee, Yainer Diaz, whichever one we think is ready to be the backup. We want to groom him. We're going to have to trade you, buddy. We like you. We appreciate you playing hurt last year, but we're going to have to trade you because he is a great defensive player. He is a guy that teams could covet. And we saw that that the Astros weren't afraid to trade for Christian Vasquez last year, even though that they're hesitant to trade for Willson Contreras because they're worried about him getting up to speed with the pitchers, but they weren't afraid to trade for Vasquez. So I think that shows that maybe they're a little bit worried about the defense. So that's why I'm still a little leery about the everyday catcher. I don't think he's going to be everyday catcher, but Dusty Baker did say that he does expect that Alvarez is going to play left field about 65 to 70% of the time. Translation, you don't really need a left fielder. But reports is that they are still talking to Michael Conforto, Michael Brantley, and they're also talking to Andrew Benintendi. So I know that there's a lot going out there. There's a lot of if this, then this. It's kind of like a conditional statement in geometry. If we do this, then we do this. If this happens, then we do that. So I think that there's a lot still out there. And I think what happens in this face-to-face meeting, and I think that the reason why it has to be face-to-face is that there's a chance that, they need to kind of say that, hey, the reason why we didn't trade for you last year, it had nothing to do with you. It just was the fact that we didn't feel like the situation is ready, but we feel like you're ready now. I know you're willing to be the DH, but we'll give you some starts as catcher. So who knows what the overall situation was, but it just sounds like Dusty Baker is kind of leaning towards him being a catcher. But wait, there's more. Baker said that he talked to former Cubs bullpen coach Lester Strode and also former Cubs pitcher John Lester about Contreras. And he said that Lester, the bullpen coach, spent as much time with him in the bullpen catching pitchers, and he's a big Contreras fan. He told me he loves the kid. So that means, I guess I got to put my name back up there. I didn't know I took it off. But that means that he's looking at him as a catcher. So who knows what the overall situation was, but it kind of, all the comments from Dusty Baker today kind of leads us to a new change in the narrative. Yes, he's probably going to play a lot of DH, possibly, if you have Martin Maldonado, because we know that Dusty Baker likes Martin Maldonado. But at the same time, you have Corey Lee and Diaz who are ready to play. There's nothing else they need to prove in AAA. These guys are both ready to play. So you've got to have playing time for them. So you can't have Contreras catching, Martin Maldonado catching, and then also Lee or Diaz catching. So you've got to have a happy medium. So the Astros have got to sit down with Contreras and decide, okay, what do I want to do? Do we want to do this? What do the numbers say? How much does he want? How much playing time does he want as a catcher? I know at the end of the day, it's Dusty Baker's decision. Once he signs the contract, that decision goes to Dusty Baker. But the Astros have to say, hey, you are a catcher. You'll play some DH. You'll play some outfield. But you've got to sell him on the Houston Astros. And the Houston Astros are a great team. So that won't be a hard sell. But wouldn't it be nice to have a offensive catcher again? Even though you take a step back in defense, he may not be the best framer. He may not be the best blocker. And that is something that, especially with Framber Valdez on the mound, that's something that you really need. But maybe with Valdez up there, you can have Corey Lee catching, maybe, because I think that his defense is pretty good. So we'll have to see with the whole situation. So, I know that there's a bunch of people like DMing Maldonado. Leave him alone. He's helped you win 2 World Series. Leave him alone. This guy has done a lot. He played hurt for the Astros last year. He played with a broken hand. If he's still with the Houston Astros next year, great. I still like that. I still like his defense and what he does, and the occasional home run. When he gets into it, he can get into it. So we'll see what happens. But in terms of Michael Conforto, I know the Astros were rumored to have been talking to him prior to the deadline to set the roster before the lock before the playoffs, whatever you call it. But he didn't end up signing with the Astros. A lot of people thought he wasn't probably ready at that time. He could only be a DH. Who knows if his shoulder is totally ready? Could he be an outfielder now, or would he be only a DH? So Conforto is the guy that's kind of like, he's the unknown. Yes, he's hit 33 home runs in his career, 28 home runs, 27. The last season he played was 2021. He batted .232 with 14 home runs and 55 RBIs. He is only 29 years old. So I think he's going to be signing a let me show you what I can do offer. And maybe the Astros can pitch him like, hey, do you want to show the league what you can do and win a World Series? While somebody like a Andrew Benintendi, he knows what he is. He knows he can get that long-term deal. So a lot of people I've seen in the chat, a lot of people have been talking about Brandon Nimmo. I just don't think the Astros are going to be looking at getting Nimmo. I think that if Alvarez wants to play left field, if you have Pedro Leon coming up as soon as possibly sometime this year to play center field, Kyle Tucker, by the way, who is at the winter meetings. I don't want to start or speculate or anything, but it's very interesting that he's at the winter meetings. I know players go there all the time, so I'm not going to start any rumors, but wouldn't it be nice? But I don't think that's going to happen. So I just don't see the Astros going out and spending that money on Nimmo. And I just don't see it. I really don't. As good as he is as a player, I see the Astros upgrading at catcher. And I think that what we saw from Chas McCormick, he's going to do a good enough job until somebody like Pedro Leon or somebody else steps up. So, or Drew Gilbert in a few years. So I think it's Chas McCormick's job to lose. Now, would they want to upgrade left field and maybe have Alvarez as DH? Sure. They're looking at all the possibilities. Like I said, if this, then this. So, yeah, it does seem like a soap opera. It does seem like Days of Our Lives and like who's dating who and everything. So we'll see what happens. But Maldi and Contreras can play 50-50. Yeah, I can see that, especially – yeah, I could totally see that. I think Dusty Baker would have to decide that who Contreras fits better with. There's certain pitchers that I think that they'll mesh better with. So, but it's just interesting the fact that this came up and that they're about to meet face to face with them. I'm pretty sure this was kind of a pre-message for their meeting. Say, hey, we really want you, and we're sorry about that. We didn't mean it. We do want you now. Sorry about back then. Just forget about our past. So a couple other things. I already talked about Justin Verlander. I do want to go ahead and talk real quickly about tomorrow at 8:30 p.m. There's going to be the first ever MLB draft lottery. The Astros are not going to be involved, but it's going to be kind of like the NBA does. And so the teams that have the worst records are going to have the most ping pong balls, so to speak. And so the A's and the Pirates have equal odds for the number one pick with 16.5%, and the Reds have 13.2%, and the Royals have 10%. And all the non-playoff teams are in the lottery. So the Astros were World Series winners, so they're definitely not there. But some other news and notes is, oh yeah, that's right. The All-MLB team came out, and there's quite a few Astros on that list. Let's talk about the first team. You have Jose Altuve at second base. Then you have Yordan Alvarez at DH. Then you have new Mets pitcher Justin Verlander at pitcher. And then you have Framber Valdez at pitcher. So of the 5 starting pitchers in the American League, the Astros have 2 of them. How does that sound? First team, all MLB. The Astros had 2 of them. Now let's look at the second team. You would think, oh, there's not that many Astros on there. Kyle Tucker is on the second team. He is the outfield, and Shohei Ohtani is on the second team. Would you have thought that? I mean, he finished higher than Alvarez did in the MVP, but I think that was a lot to do with the pitching side of things. And then also, Ryan Presley made the list. He's in the relieving core for this. So this is awesome that you're seeing some Astros represented in the All-MLB team. And this is both American League and National League. So you have 6 Astros. I think it was 6, right? 6 Astros on this list. And there's not that many players. That shows how good the Astros were last year. And so I'm just super stoked about this. So that was awesome when I saw that. I think Ryan Presley was kind of a little surprise to me, but I think that's going to be cool. So Valdez was a big surprise for a lot of people this year, but I think a lot of people are really super stoked about him. So I know there's been a lot of reports that the Astros wanted Christian Vasquez back, but they wanted him back as kind of his role like this year. They wanted him back as a part-time player. You can't argue the fact that he was part of a no-hitter in the playoffs, and he did a great job catching, but you would think that he wants an everyday job. So Christian Vasquez is probably looking for an everyday job. The Astros would love to bring him back, but they're probably looking for a bigger fish right now. And like I mentioned earlier, the Astros are after Andrew Benintendi, Michael Brantley, and Michael Conforto. So we'll see what actually happens. But Justin Verlander, it's hard to see him go. But the Astros need to upgrade at offense, and they can't do that if they throw all their money at at Justin Verlander. The Mets can do it because Steve Cohen has a lot of money. The Astros do not have to do that. So this is a little interesting quote I want to do, and I'm going to go and pull this up. I haven't done this in a while. It's going to be Thoughts by Dusty.
Thoughts by Dusty.
All right, so the question was, if they sign a player, who makes the decision at this point? Dusty Baker said, well, Jim? Somebody says Jim. He said, Dusty Baker said, you give away that much money. I don't have that money, and I don't make that much. I don't have that much power. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, when it comes to money and personnel decisions, I mean, it starts at the top. So what he's saying is that Jim Crane is the one that's making the decisions, and that's what we all kind of expected. No, we're not saying like Keith Law is and all these people bashing the Astros that he is becoming Jerry Jones. I think that he is running his ideas, and he's talking to his three-headed assistant GM team right now, and they're trying to do what's best for this. So um, I think that the Astros are doing what they want to do. Jim Crane is also talking to Enos Cabell, Jeff Bagwell, and a whole bunch of other people to kind of think about what the best decision is from this point on. So it's not just Jim Crane being like, oh, I'm the almighty, what I say goes. They're making decisions based on what's best for the Astros, what's best for the organization, and what would it take to win another World Series. And so if that is sacrificing maybe a little bit defense at catcher to get some more offense, great. I'm all for it. You already upgraded at pitcher. Why not upgrade at catcher? It makes a lot of sense. So I think that's all I got. I don't think there's anything else new, but it's just a lot of interesting comments from this. Oh, yeah. Dusty Baker did say about Justin Verlander. He couldn't say anything official because the deal was not officially announced by the Mets, but he did say he's a man and he was a pleasure to manage. So that's all Dusty Baker said about Justin Verlander leaving. So just in summary, Contreras, if the Astros sign him, he may catch more than we thought. There's a chance Martin Maldonado could be traded if the Astros sign Contreras. And the Astros are still looking at Yuli Gurriel, Michael Brantley. And the Astros are still, that's from Dusty Baker. And other reports, I think it was John Heyman or somebody said that the Astros are still looking at a left fielder, somebody like a left-handed bat, somebody like Andrew Benintendi, Michael Brantley, or Michael Conforto. So that was a lot to talk about on this solo edition of the Locked On Astros podcast. Go ahead and give us a like. Go ahead and make us your first listen every day on YouTube, and go and subscribe to us. And we enjoy doing this. And Brett will be back. He's at the Rockets game with his son. So I decided to go ahead and go solo today, but go Rockets. Go ahead and get a win, please. It'll be nice to see a win there. But thank you for making Locked On Astros podcast your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. The biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. We'll be back tomorrow to talk more about the winter meetings. And will Willson Contreras be Houston Astro tomorrow? We'll talk about that and more.